The sound of knuckles against wood barely registered over the rain hammering my windows, but something made me lower my book. 3 soft, hesitant taps. I froze, heart suddenly pounding as I glanced at the clock, 2:37 a.m. Nobody knocks at that hour unless something is terribly wrong. When I opened the door, there stood Maya from next door, mascara tracking down her cheeks, a hastily packed duffel bag clutched against her chest. Her voice cracked as she whispered those words that would change both our lives forever. "Can I stay here tonight, please?" If you've ever had a moment where a single decision altered your entire life's path, hit that like button. And if you want more stories about the extraordinary connections that can form between ordinary people, subscribe now. Let's continue with a story about how sometimes the most important family we have is the one we create in moments of need. I'd known Maya only in passing, just another neighbor in apartment 4B with the bright smile who collected packages for others when they weren't home. What I didn't know then was the darkness hiding behind that smile, or how opening my door that night would lead us both down a path of healing neither of us expected. 2 hours earlier, I had been mindlessly scrolling through Netflix, the background noise barely masking the rising voices from next door. Arguments from their apartment weren't uncommon, but something about tonight felt different. The walls in this building were thin enough that I could hear the crash of something breaking, followed by a silence more terrifying than the shouting. Maya stood shivering in my doorway, clutching that duffel bag like a life preserver. Rain had soaked through her thin sweater, and a bruise was beginning to form near her right temple. I didn't ask questions, not then. I simply stepped aside and welcomed her into my sanctuary of mismatched furniture and half-unpacked moving boxes. My own life was hardly together, but in that moment, I became someone's safe harbor. "I'm sorry," she kept whispering as I handed her a towel and made up the couch. I didn't know where else to go. "You don't need to apologize," I told her, setting down a mug of tea that would go untouched until morning. "You can stay as long as you need." That first night, Maya slept fitfully on my second-hand couch while I lay awake in my bedroom, listening for sounds from next door, wondering if her boyfriend would come looking for her. By morning, the rain had stopped, but the storm in Maya's life was far from over. Morning light crept through my blinds, casting striped shadows across Maya's sleeping form. She looked younger in sleep, the worry lines smoothed from her forehead. I moved quietly, preparing coffee and toast, unsure of the protocols for hosting someone fleeing from domestic violence. The apartment felt different with another person in it, less empty, but charged with an uncertain energy. When Maya finally stirred, she sat up with that momentary confusion of waking in an unfamiliar place before reality crashed back. "I'm so sorry about last night," she began, wrapping my throw blanket around her shoulders like armor. "You have nothing to apologize for," I said, pushing a mug of coffee toward her. "Do you want to talk about it?" And so began our tentative friendship, born from crisis and cemented in those quiet morning confessions. Maya's story unfolded between sips of cooling coffee, 3 years with Mark, who had started as charming and attentive before slowly isolating her from friends and family. The criticism came next, then controlling her finances, and finally, the physical abuse. Last night wasn't the first time, she admitted, eyes fixed on the steam rising from her mug. But I promised myself it would be the last. I nodded, thinking of the raised voices I'd heard over the months, the times I'd seen Maya in the hallway wearing sunglasses indoors or long sleeves in summer heat. How many signs had I missed? How many times had I chosen not to get involved? "You can stay here," I offered. "Until you figure things out." Maya's grateful smile was worth the awkwardness of sharing my small one-bedroom apartment with someone who had been a stranger just hours before. That first week was a delicate dance of boundaries and shared spaces. Maya slept on my couch, careful to fold her blankets each morning and tuck her belongings neatly against the wall. I learned she was a kindergarten teacher who loved true crime podcasts and couldn't cook anything more complex than scrambled eggs. She discovered my collection of fantasy novels and my habit of talking to my houseplants. Mark called her phone relentlessly. Sometimes Maya would stare at the screen as it lit up with his name, her finger hovering over the answer button before she'd set it face down and walk away. Other times, she'd silence it immediately, shoulders tensing at each vibration. She deleted his voicemails without listening and blocked his number twice, only to unblock it hours later, just in case. In case of what? I asked gently one evening as we shared takeout containers at my tiny kitchen table. In case he's sorry, she whispered, ashamed. In case this time he really changes. I wanted to tell her he wouldn't change, that the cycle would continue, but who was I to give advice? My own relationship history was a wasteland of poor choices and half-hearted commitments. Instead, I offered what I could, a safe place, an attentive ear, and distractions when the weight of her decisions became too heavy. On day 9 of Maya's stay, Mark showed up at my door. I had just returned from grocery shopping to find him pounding on my apartment door, shouting Maya's name. She was still at work, thankfully, but my arms were full of paper bags as I approached. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through me. He turned, and I saw a handsome man with bloodshot eyes and a desperate expression. "Where is she?" he demanded. "I know she's staying here." "I think you should leave," I said, shifting my groceries to reach for my phone. "Look, this is between me and Maya," he said, lowering his voice to a tone that might have seemed reasonable to an outsider. "We had a fight, and she's overreacting. I just need to talk to her." "If she wanted to talk to you, she would have answered your calls," I replied, surprising myself with my boldness. "Please leave before I call security." His expression darkened. "You don't know anything about us." "About her. She always does this, runs away, makes me look like the bad guy." "The bruise on her face made you look like the bad guy," I said quietly. "Now please leave." He stepped closer, and for a moment, I thought he might push past me into the apartment. Instead, he jabbed a finger toward my face. "Tell her I came by. Tell her she can't hide forever. This isn't over." After he left, I sat on the floor among my scattered groceries and called Maya, warning her about Mark's visit. She didn't come home that night, staying instead with a coworker, afraid he might return. The apartment felt strangely empty without her. When Maya did return the next day, she came with a police escort to collect more of her belongings from her apartment. I watched from my peephole as officers stood guard while she quickly filled 2 suitcases. She had filed a restraining order, she told me later. A first step toward breaking free. "I'm going to find my own place," she announced that evening. "I can't keep imposing on you." "You're not imposing," I said honestly. "But I understand needing your own space." What I didn't say was how her presence had filled a loneliness in my life I hadn't fully acknowledged. Before Maya knocked on my door, my routine had been comfortable but solitary: work, home, occasional outings with acquaintances who never quite became close friends. In just 2 weeks, Maya had transformed my apartment from a place I slept to a home where laughter happened, where secrets were shared over midnight snacks, where someone noticed if I was running late. Maya found a small studio apartment across town 3 weeks later. I helped her move in, carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs and assembling IKEA furniture until midnight. Her new place was tiny but bright, with a security system and a doorman, safety features she now prioritized over square footage or updated appliances. "I wouldn't have had the courage to do this without you," she told me as we collapsed onto her newly built futon, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes. "Opening your door that night, you saved me." "You saved yourself," I corrected her. "I just provided the couch." She laughed, but her eyes were serious. "You provided much more than that. You showed me what it feels like to live without walking on eggshells, without apologizing for existing." I'd forgotten what that felt like. On her first night in the new apartment, I stayed late, helping her arrange furniture and hang curtains. As I prepared to leave, I noticed her glancing nervously at the windows, the door, the unfamiliar shadows. "I could stay tonight," I offered. Just until you get settled." The relief in her eyes was answer enough. That night, I took the couch while Maya slept in her new bedroom. The role reversal wasn't lost on either of us. In the quiet darkness of her new living room, I reflected on how quickly someone could go from stranger to essential. Maya had arrived at my door as a neighbor in need and somehow became family in the span of weeks. Not the family we're born into, but the kind we choose, the connections that form in the fractures of our planned lives. Over the following months, Maya rebuilt her life with remarkable resilience. She joined a support group for survivors of domestic violence, reconnected with friends Mark had isolated her from, and even began dating again, cautiously, on her own terms. We established a tradition of Sunday brunches, alternating between our apartments and occasionally trying new cafes when our budgets allowed. 6 months after that rainy night, Maya invited me to her classroom's end-of-year celebration. I sat awkwardly among parents and other guests as 5-year-olds performed songs with more enthusiasm than musical accuracy. Afterward, as Maya introduced me to her colleagues, she called me her chosen family. The term settled around my shoulders like a perfectly weighted blanket. That summer, we took a weekend trip to a nearby beach town, Maya's first vacation in years without having to consider Mark's preferences or manage his moods. We built sandcastles like her kindergartners and stayed up too late drinking wine on our rental's tiny balcony. Under stars partially obscured by city lights, Maya told me she was considering going back to school for her master's degree, a dream Mark had dismissed as unnecessary and expensive. "Do you think I can do it?" she asked, vulnerability creeping into her voice. "I know you can," I replied without hesitation. "You're the strongest person I know." She shook her head. "I don't feel strong most days. I still have nightmares. I still check the locks 3 times before bed. Sometimes I hear a voice that sounds like his in a crowd and can't breathe." "That doesn't make you weak," I said. "It makes you human. Strength isn't about not being afraid, it's about living fully despite the fear." Our lives developed a comfortable rhythm. We each had our independent routines and separate homes, but our connection remained solid. Maya started her graduate program, juggling classes with teaching. I received a promotion at work that required longer hours but finally gave me financial stability. We were both too busy to meet as often, but our Sunday brunches remained sacred. 1 year after the night Maya knocked on my door, Mark violated the restraining order. Maya called me in tears from a police station where she was filing a report. He had followed her after work, confronting her in the parking garage of her building. The encounter had been brief but terrifying, leaving Maya shaken and questioning her progress. "Maybe I'll never be free of him," she sobbed as I drove her back to my apartment, where she would stay for the next few days. "Maybe this is just my life now, always looking over my shoulder." "This is a setback, not a defeat," I reminded her, echoing the words her therapist had given her for moments of doubt. "You've built a life he can't touch, no matter how he tries to frighten you." Those few days of Maya staying with me again revealed how much we'd both changed in a year. She was no longer the terrified woman clutching a hastily packed bag but someone who knew her own worth. I had transformed too, from someone who hesitated to get involved to a person who understood the value of showing up for others. As Maya's second year of freedom approached, she organized a celebration she called her rebirthday party. She invited friends from work, her support group, and her graduate program, a patchwork gathering of people who represented different facets of her rebuilt life. "I used to think love meant sacrifice and pain," she told me as we prepared food for her guests. "That proving my commitment meant enduring criticism and control. Now I know real love, whether romantic or friendship, creates space for growth, not constraints." The party was a testament to Maya's journey, filled with laughter, honest conversations, and a cake she had proudly baked herself, a skill she had taken cooking classes to develop. As guests mingled in her now fully furnished apartment, Maya pulled me aside to give me a small wrapped package. "What's this for?" I asked, surprised. "For opening your door," she said simply. Inside the box was a key on a hand-painted keychain depicting 2 doors side by side. "You'll always have a place with me," she explained. "Just like you gave me that night." 2 years passed, bringing more changes. Maya completed her master's degree and accepted a position as a curriculum specialist. I started dating someone who understood and respected my close friendship with Maya. Mark eventually moved to another state following a job opportunity, relieving a background tension we had both carried. Sometimes weeks would pass between our meetings now, our lives flowing in different but parallel channels. Yet whenever one of us texted SOS brunch, the other would appear, ready to listen or celebrate or simply sit in comfortable silence. 3 years after that rainy night, I faced my own crisis when my mother was diagnosed with cancer. Without hesitation, Maya helped me pack for an extended stay in my hometown, arranged for my plants to be watered, and drove me to the airport at dawn. "Whatever you need," she promised. "I'm here." During those difficult months of my mother's treatment, Maya sent care packages, made late-night phone calls to let me vent, and eventually flew out to meet my family, seamlessly integrating into my history as if she had always been part of it. "She's good for you," my mother observed from her hospital bed after Maya had left to give us privacy. Friends like that are rare, the ones who show up when the real work of caring begins. When I finally returned home, emotionally drained but relieved by my mother's remission, Maya was waiting at the airport with a sign reading, "Welcome back, hero." She had cleaned my apartment, restocked my refrigerator, and placed fresh flowers on my kitchen table, creating the welcome home I desperately needed. 5 years after Maya's knock on my door, we found ourselves sitting on my balcony, watching a summer storm roll in, not unlike the one that had been raging the night she first appeared at my threshold. We were drinking wine from glasses that didn't match, a testament to our combined households of imperfection. "Do you ever think about how differently things might have turned out?" Maya asked, watching lightning flash in the distance. "If I had gone to someone else's door that night? Or if no one had answered?" I considered the question seriously. I think about it more than I probably should. How close we come to missing the connections that save us. "You know," Maya said thoughtfully, "for a long time, I thought of myself as the one who was saved that night. But the truth is, we saved each other." She was right. Before Maya, I had been going through the motions of an independent life without realizing how isolated I had become. Her appearance forced me to engage, to care, to become part of something larger than my own routine. In opening my door to her, I had unknowingly opened myself to the messy, complicated gift of genuine connection. As the rain began to fall in earnest, we moved inside, closing the balcony door against the elements. Maya helped me prepare dinner as we had done countless times, moving around my kitchen with the ease of long familiarity. Our conversation drifted to future plans, her consideration of doctoral programs, my tentative thoughts about relocating for a new job opportunity. Whatever paths our lives took, we both understood that some connections transcend distance and circumstance. That night, as Maya prepared to leave, we stood at my doorway, the same threshold where our story had begun. "Same time next Sunday?" she asked, referencing our standing brunch date. "Wouldn't miss it," I promised. As I closed the door behind her, I thought about how a moment of crisis had forged a bond stronger than many lifelong relationships. How the simple act of opening a door, literally and figuratively, had changed the trajectory of 2 lives. Sometimes the family we need most isn't the one we're born into but the one that forms in moments of our greatest vulnerability. The people who see us at our worst and still choose to stay. The unexpected connections that begin with a soft knock and a whispered question, "Can I stay here tonight, please?" The answer, I've learned, should always be yes. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe for more content that celebrates the power of human connection. Remember that sometimes the most important decision we make is simply opening our door when someone knocks. You never know how that single action might change both your lives forever.